The people are, we are dealing with the situation in this country right now, obviously, where apparently the president has pivoted a little bit to acknowledging that maybe there should be something done about the coronavirus. And that is that masks are not evil. And that seems to be about it. No money for contact tracing, no money to bulk up the testing capacity. I got an email from someone last week, maybe it was a week before, when we were talking about testing, and they said they work in a lab. The big problem is there's just simply a lack of people who have the technical skills to do this, and sort of secondary supply chain issues. By secondary, I mean like reagents and I don't know, swabs, stuff that could be provided to these facilities with the invocation of the Defense Production Act. And the idea that Donald Trump will not invoke this is absurd. So much of what we're witnessing now almost defies explanation, just in terms of response to something that is real. And so, we'll talk about that. But on the other end of this is the fact that we're going to have to reshut the economy in many states around the country. And we are starting to see bad economic numbers head back in the wrong direction. And we are days away from millions of people beginning the process of being evicted from their homes. And we are days away from seeing millions of people lose a significant portion of the unemployment benefits they've been getting for the past 3 months or so, because I don't even know why. It doesn't even make sense on their own terms. Here is Steve Mnuchin. Let's start with this one. This is clip number 5. Here's Steve Mnuchin at a press hearing. Right now, a COVID economic relief bill is tied up in the Senate because they can't figure out the best way to deny Americans robust is not the right word, adequate unemployment benefit. They really desperately want to do that. And they're just trying to figure out technically the best way of doing it. Here's Mnuchin.
But the fundamental issue, and we all acknowledged, there was a technical problem where we were in emergency last time, so we instituted this quickly. And in certain cases, people were paid more to stay home than they were to work. And I think that's something that the American public understands. We're not going to use taxpayer money to pay people more to stay home. So we're going to transition to a UI system that is based upon wage replacement. We've talked about approximately 70% wage replacement, and we're just going through the mechanics of that.
All right. So
there's very strong.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. Keep playing it. I didn't realize there was another clip.
Very strong tax incentives, tax credits in this bill to get people back to work.
First of all, the premise is insane. We should be paying people to stay home from work. That's exactly what we should be doing if we were taking this pandemic seriously. If we realized the mistake that we had made in the first instance, which was not aggressively paying people to stay home across the board, because you had states like Florida or Texas that didn't want to pay unemployment insurance. We should be paying people to stay at home. And there is a small amount of people who are getting paid more to stay at home than they would have had they had their job existed. There's no guarantee that the job exists anyways. But so what? So what? It has helped the economy. It is the only thing that's keeping the economy afloat. You can still have consumer spending if the government pays people to stay home. And it's the consumer spending that's keeping everything afloat at this point. It's the only thing that is going to diminish the amount of people who are being evicted. It's utterly bizarre. And be clear on what's happening. The average benefit that a state gives when you get unemployment insurance is about 45, 50%. Depends on the state. Sometimes it can be a little bit higher, sometimes a little bit lower. The federal government, instead of saying we're going to give an extra 20, 25% or whatever it is, just said blanket number $600 per person per week. In some instances, that brought people up to, I don't know, 75% of wages, 80%, 90%, 105%, 110%. And now they're trying to figure out, well, how can we technically make sure that we don't have any people who are getting above 70%? This is just, it's madness. Here he is on Chris Wallace. And even Chris Wallace on Fox News is like, well, wait a second. It's a good thing to pay people to stay at home, A, and B, it's also the only thing that's keeping the economy afloat.
That the GDP number for the second quarter nationally will not be the plus 1 or 2 or 3% that we normally see, but instead for the second quarter will be something like minus 33%. One, is that what we should expect to see, a contraction of the economy by a third in the second quarter? And secondly, if it's anything like that, why would you want to cut back on the $600 stimulus payments, the unemployment benefits? Because there are projections that even if you cut it to around $200, which is basically what I think you're talking about, with a 75% of wages, there are estimates that that's going to cost millions of jobs.
Well, Chris, we always said the second quarter was going to be a very bad quarter.
Just want to be clear here. Chris Wallace understands that if you inhibit the buying power of the American consumer, that's going to cost other jobs. You're trying to save money with this $200 as opposed to $600 a week thing, but you're going to end up spending it on the other end when you knock more people out of work. It's insanity. And Mnuchin, remember in that last clip, it's like, well, we have tax incentives to bring people back to work. It literally is the functional equivalent of saying, like, we're not only going to not pay people to jump off the cliff, we're going to encourage them by forcing them to jump off the cliff, and then also make it even more fun for them by giving them tax incentives when they jump off the cliff.
Again, that's not for economic reasons, that's for health reasons. We literally shut down the entire economy. And I think, as we've said, we expect the third quarter, the consensus is 17% GDP. So we do think you're going to see a very big rebound. I might just also comment on June retail sales were 1% higher than June of last year. So all that money we pumped into the economy, it worked. People went out and spent. And on the, as it relates to the unemployment insurance, again, I think workers and Americans understand the concept that you shouldn't be paid more to stay home than to work, that the fair thing is to replace wages, and it just wouldn't be fair to use taxpayer dollars to pay more people to sit home than they would get working and get a job.
It's just insanity. Have people been complaining about the fairness of keeping the economy afloat? Because people who work at sub-living wages are now actually making slightly more. It's just absurd. It really is absurd. And in many respects, it's inexplicable. It's just, I guess, their ideology, or I don't know. You would imagine that Donald Trump, seeing that he's losing in the polls in battleground state after battleground state, would say, hey, like, guys, why don't we just give money? It's almost like they just sort of, I don't know, it's some type of kabuki.